Sophia was always praised as the perfect daughter. Straight A's, spotless reputation, obedient smile, all carefully curated for her toxic parents to brag about at every dinner party. But behind those closed doors, Sophia was nothing more than a puppet, her strings pulled by parents who demanded she study medicine, marry a wealthy heir, and surrender her life for their status. Everyone envied her perfect life, but no one saw the golden cage, or the trap she was quietly building from inside it. What would you do if you were forced to play the good child forever? Would you dare break free? Drop a yes in the comments if you believe toxic parents deserve to pay the price. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more true revenge stories. Sophia never asked to be perfect. Perfection was demanded of her the moment she was born into the Tran family, a household where success wasn't just expected, it was extracted at any cost. Her father, a charming businessman with a hidden temper, and her mother, a socialite obsessed with appearances, saw Sophia not as a daughter, but as a tool. A beautiful, obedient showpiece to flaunt at charity galas, neighborhood gossip circles, and endless dinner parties where bragging was sport. By age 6, Sophia's schedule was more crowded than most adults. Piano on Mondays, ballet on Tuesdays, math tutors every night, violin lessons squeezed in on weekends. Each achievement was another trophy for her parents to parade around. If she slipped, a B+ instead of an A, she'd face cold silences, locked doors, or worse, her mother's shrill voice echoing through the house about how she was ruining their perfect image. Her father, ever the charming host outside, would tighten the leash inside. When Sophia asked for an allowance like her classmates, he smiled and told her every dollar she earned from tutoring or scholarships belonged to the family fund. It was for her future, he said. But Sophia never saw that future. Birthdays meant checks signed over to him. Her teenage job at the campus library, every penny transferred to an account she couldn't access. She learned early that fighting back meant stricter rules, colder dinners, and doors that locked from the outside. At school, her classmates envied her. The straight-A student with glossy hair, crisp uniforms, and a brand new car she wasn't even allowed to drive alone. They didn't see the tracking app on her phone, the daily calls checking her location, or the quiet fear in her eyes whenever her parents' names popped up on the screen. Love was conditional. Affection came only when she performed. And when she didn't? Her mother's hand on her cheek reminded her who held the power. Sophia learned to smile through it all. She learned to say yes, mother, and, of course, father, while her mind drifted far away. She wondered if other girls got to laugh with their parents, sit by the fireplace and share secrets, feel safe at home. For Sophia, home was a stage. The spotlight never dimmed, and her script was written by someone else. When she turned 18, Sophia dared to dream. Maybe college would be her escape. Maybe, if she studied hard enough, she could get a scholarship far away, somewhere her parents couldn't control. But the Tran family always had a plan. They pushed her into medical school close to home, bragging to everyone about their future surgeon daughter. They showed off her white coat on Facebook, using her dreams to gain clout. They even chose who she would date. A quiet arrangement with the wealthy Nguyen family, whose son was next in line to inherit a chain of private hospitals. At 24, Sophia realized freedom wasn't given. It had to be taken. She discovered by accident that her parents had used her name to take out massive private loans, shady deals with local lenders, gambling her spotless credit score for quick money to fund their high life. When she confronted them, they didn't deny it. Her mother laughed, reminding her that everything she had was because of them, that she owed them her life, her future, and now her signature. Something broke inside Sophia that night. She didn't scream or slam the door. She didn't cry. Instead, she sat at her childhood desk, staring at her framed diplomas and awards, all worthless if her freedom still belonged to them. She knew she couldn't fight back with fists. but she could fight back with a smile. From that moment on, Sophia perfected her act. She became exactly what they wanted, the perfect daughter. She wore the dresses her mother picked, smiled at the right people, and agreed to the engagement with the Nguyen heir. She played the role so well, her toxic parents never saw the trap she was setting, a trap so carefully woven, they'd sign away everything with their own hands. And when they finally realized the truth, it would be far too late. Sophia's breaking point didn't arrive with fireworks. It came quietly, hidden in a stack of papers she was never meant to see. It was late one night in her final year of med school. Her father had asked her to come home early from her shift at the hospital to help him with important paperwork. Sophia, the ever-dutiful daughter, obeyed. He greeted her with that same rehearsed warmth he saved for nosy neighbors, the smile that meant, "Don't ask questions." He slid a thick envelope across the dining table. "Sign these, princess. Just routine family forms for the new house we're buying." He didn't look her in the eyes. Her mother hovered by the doorway, arms folded, eyes sharp and cold. Sophia sat down. She uncapped her pen, pretending to skim the pages like she always did, just enough to keep up the illusion that she trusted them. But that night, something told her to read the fine print. Maybe it was the way her father tapped his foot, or how her mother's nails dug into her arm when she reached for the wrong page. Her eyes froze on a line that didn't belong on a house form. Collateral. The borrower's daughter, Sophia Tran, hereby agrees that all debts and obligations are guaranteed by her personal income and credit. Sophia's throat went dry. Her pen hovered mid-air. She flipped through more pages. Hidden among the legal jargon were loan agreements, signed with her forged signature, dates stretching back years, hundreds of thousands of dollars tied to her name, loans with impossible interest rates from shady lenders whose names she recognized from whispers on campus, families destroyed overnight when debts weren't repaid. She looked up. Her father's smile was tight now, his jaw set. Her mother wouldn't meet her eyes at all. "Is this real?" Sophia's voice came out thin, unfamiliar. Her father didn't bother denying it. "It's for us, Sophia. Everything we do is for this family. You wouldn't be where you are without us. Now it's your turn to do your part." Her mother cut in sharply. "You think your scholarships paid for everything? Grow up. Your father had to secure private help. Now sign it and stop acting ungrateful." Sophia sat frozen. In that moment, every memory clicked into place. The locked accounts, the vanished savings, the family fund she never saw. The perfect daughter mask she'd worn for so long suddenly felt like a noose. All this time, she thought she was the prize her toxic parents polished for status. In truth, she was their golden goose, a living, breathing checkbook they could cash at will. Sophia forced her hand not to shake. She laid down the pen. She met her father's eyes and asked the only question that mattered. "What happens if I don't sign?" He didn't hesitate. "Don't be dramatic. You will sign. You owe us. Everything you have is because of us. You know that." Her mother stepped forward, voice dripping with scorn. "After all we've done for you, don't make us regret keeping you." Keeping you. The words slammed into her chest. She wasn't a daughter. She was property. And like property, she could be traded, leveraged, sold off to cover the cost of her parents' greed. Sophia's mind drifted back to every suffocating rule, every hour she'd practiced piano when she wanted to play outside, every fake smile at every dinner party, every dollar she earned, taken, every choice, made for her. Her whole life, she'd obeyed, played nice, been perfect. But sitting at that dining table, staring at the signature line they'd forged so many times already, Sophia saw the truth. Perfection hadn't protected her. It had trapped her, and now it was her only weapon. She signed the paper, not because she gave in, but because she needed time. She needed them to trust her. She needed them blind. That night, she sat awake on her childhood bed, listening to the soft creak of the floorboards as her father moved through the hallway, She realized she had nothing left to lose. They had taken everything: her money, her freedom, her credit, her future. What they didn't know was that she still had her mind, and she was done playing by their rules. The next morning, Sophia dressed in her crisp white coat and kissed her mother's cheek goodbye. She smiled as she stepped out the door, calm and obedient as ever. But in her bag were copies of the forged documents, carefully hidden between her anatomy textbooks. At school, she skipped lectures for the first time in her life. Instead, she sat in the law library, poring over every loan agreement, every signature, every loophole. She called an old friend, a young lawyer who owed her a favor from undergrad days. She asked the questions she could never ask at home. What happens if parents commit fraud in your name? What happens if you prove it? Her friend's voice on the other end was cold and sharp. Sophia, they can't do this. But if you want out, you can't just fight them. You need to make them give it to you willingly. Sophia understood immediately. If she dragged them to court, they'd ruin her reputation, twist the story, cry for sympathy. Her toxic parents were masters of pretending to be victims, so she would play the part they wrote for her, the perfect daughter. She would nod, smile, obey, and behind that perfect mask, she would build a trap so elegant they'd beg to sign away every penny they'd stolen. Sophia's act began that very night. She came home with dinner for her parents, apologizing for her bad attitude. She thanked them for guiding her. She promised to focus on the wedding. Her mother smiled, convinced she'd won. Her father poured himself another drink and patted Sophia's hand like she was still 12. Inside, Sophia repeated a single promise to herself like a prayer. You wanted the perfect daughter. Now you'll get her, and she will destroy you. Sophia's revenge didn't explode overnight. It unfolded like a patient chess game. The first piece she moved was herself. Step 1 was winning back every ounce of her toxic parents' trust. She needed them comfortable, smug even. So, she played her role to perfection. The dutiful daughter who apologized for ever doubting them, who swore she'd never question their sacrifices again. She praised her father's brilliant business sense at family dinners. She asked her mother's opinion on flower arrangements for the engagement party. She let them believe they were tightening the leash, when in truth, they were handing it to her. Sophia knew the engagement was her golden ticket. Her parents had pushed for it for years, a match made to boost their social standing and secure their financial safety net through the Nguyen family's vast medical network. They never imagined Sophia might use it against them. So she leaned in. She made herself indispensable to her future in-laws. She charmed her fiancé's conservative parents with her perfect grades and spotless image. She offered to take charge of the wedding paperwork. After all, she was so responsible, they beamed to their friends. Sophia handled every document, every meeting with the notary, every dotted line, and in the shadows, she slipped in a clause. The prenup she drafted looked standard: an agreement to protect the Nguyen family's assets, the Tran family's dignity, and Sophia's independence as a modern woman. But buried deep in the fine print was her trap, a clause that required her parents' full disclosure of any financial liens or debts connected to her name before the marriage could be legally recognized. If they failed, the engagement could be voided without penalty, but not before everything they invested into this perfect match would be forfeit. Her toxic parents were so blinded by the glitter of marrying into old money that they didn't bother reading the details. Her father practically shoved the documents into his briefcase, bragging about the lavish ceremony they'd host to show off their perfect daughter and her perfect catch. Meanwhile, Sophia played both sides. With her lawyer friend's help, she opened a quiet trust fund in her name alone. Seated with scholarships she secretly reclaimed, and small consulting fees she began earning under the table. She needed just enough to pay for good legal protection when the final move came. Sophia's act grew more flawless by the day. She let her mother drag her to endless dress fittings and cake tastings. She nodded along as her father called her his biggest investment. In private, She slipped copies of the forged loans and debt ledgers into a secure folder, building her arsenal piece by piece. At night, when everyone else was asleep, she practiced her real script, the calm, legal language that would cut her toxic parents off at the knees when the time came. She studied family asset laws, contract loopholes, and inheritance restrictions. She trained herself not to flinch when her mother barked at her, or her father slammed his whiskey glass down when she asked innocent questions about the family fund. Through it all, Sophia's smile never cracked. If anything, she shone brighter. Her toxic parents thought they had never seen her so perfectly obedient. They mistook her silence for submission. They didn't realize she was sharpening her blade behind her back. By the time the engagement party invitations went out, Sophia had laid the groundwork for her revenge. The venue was booked at an extravagant hotel ballroom, all paid for by the Tran family's carefully hidden loans. The guest list brimmed with socialites, investors, and politicians who knew her father only by his charming laugh and pristine suits. They would all be there to witness the final show. Sophia stood in her childhood bedroom the night before the invitations were mailed. She looked at her reflection in the old mirror, the soft curls pinned just right, the pearls her mother gave her, the calm mask of the perfect daughter. She whispered to herself, "They wanted me perfect. Now they'll see what perfect really looks like." And when they did, her toxic parents wouldn't just lose their puppet. They'd lose everything they built on her back. Sophia's plan didn't just work, it flourished. Once her toxic parents believed the engagement was locked in, they grew reckless. Their need to flaunt Sophia's perfect match pushed them deeper into the snare she'd laid. Her father boasted about the coming wedding at every poker game and golf meet. He paraded Sophia's engagement photos on his phone like stock certificates, telling anyone who'd listen that his future son-in-law's hospital empire would secure the Tran family legacy forever. Meanwhile, her mother hosted brunches dripping with gossip and promises. The perfect daughter had snagged the ultimate prize. Behind the scenes, Sophia was moving the real pieces. At every family dinner, she planted tiny seeds. She'd sweetly ask her father if they should consolidate family assets to look more respectable to the Nguyen family. She'd lean in as if sharing a secret. "You know how these old money people worry about appearances, Dad? They'd feel safer if we showed everything was neat and clean. Maybe we should move the house and the old rental properties into the new family trust. I'll manage it for you. It'll make us look more legitimate." Her father, ego swollen by the idea that the Nguyen family might see him as their equal, agreed without reading the fine print. Just like the prenup, the trust was designed by Sophia and her lawyer friend. On paper, it made Sophia the sole managing trustee, with rights to reallocate or liquidate any property for the benefit of the family. In reality, she was rewriting the ownership papers that chained her to her toxic parents for decades. The more Sophia smiled, the more her parents fed her power. Her mother even bragged to old friends that Sophia would be taking care of the entire Tran estate once she married into the Nguyen fortune. They didn't see they were handing over the keys to the castle. It didn't take long for cracks to show. Her father's creditors, the ones he'd hidden for years, began sniffing around when rumors of the engagement leaked into the community. They came knocking, politely at first, then more urgently. Sophia watched her father's forced smiles turn sour at dinner parties when whispers about his hidden debts surfaced. Her mother snapped at waiters and seamstresses, lashing out at any slight inconvenience as her perfect plan for Sophia's future started to slip from her hands. Sophia stayed silent. She simply brought them more papers to sign. New trust revisions, small updates for the lawyers, harmless clarifications. They signed everything. They always did. And each signature buried them deeper. One night, her father stormed into her room, reeking of whiskey, eyes bloodshot. "Why are these loan sharks calling my office, Sophia? You told me you'd handle it." Sophia didn't flinch. She only looked up from her laptop, her voice calm, sweet, perfect. I am handling it, Dad. We just have to show the Nguyen family that everything's under control. If you want this marriage to go through, we can't have any secrets, right? Her father's anger dissolved into panic. For the first time, the mask cracked. Sophia saw fear in his eyes. Fear that she could ruin him. Fear that the puppet had learned to pull the strings. By the end of that month, the Tran family's entire real estate portfolio, hidden cash reserves, and all Sophia's forged debts were bundled under one family trust, controlled by Sophia alone. To the outside world, it looked like a smart move, the perfect daughter preparing to merge two powerful families. To Sophia, it was checkmate in slow motion. While her toxic parents posed for engagement portraits, Sophia smiled alongside them, the perfect daughter draped in silk and pearls. But her eyes were cold. She knew that when the final curtain fell, they wouldn't own the stage, or her, ever again. Sophia's toxic parents thought they'd signed papers to secure their power, but they'd just handed her the keys to destroy them. What would you do in her place? Drop A in the comments if you think revenge like this is worth every second. And don't forget to subscribe. The grand engagement party was supposed to be the Tran family's crowning glory, the final gleaming display of their perfect daughter and her perfect future. But for Sophia, it was the stage for her final act. In the days leading up to the party, the tension inside the house turned sharp enough to cut glass. Sophia's father paced the halls late at night, murmuring into his phone behind locked doors. Her mother snapped at tailors and florists, barking demands for more flowers, bigger centerpieces, more champagne, anything to drown out the whispers trickling through their polished circle. Rumors were starting to swirl, that the Tran family's fortune wasn't as spotless as they claimed, that her father's successful deals were funded by shady loans. Sophia did nothing to stop the talk. She quietly nudged it along, feeding small details to a few curious ears. A word here, a slip there, just enough to make the sharks circle. Sophia spent her nights alone in her old bedroom, the same four walls that once felt like a cage, now a war room. Stacks of documents were spread across her childhood desk, forged signatures, fraudulent loans, unpaid debts, each one a nail in the coffin her toxic parents had built for themselves. She rehearsed her speech in front of her mirror until she could say every word without her voice shaking. The plan was brutal but clean. Expose the truth when the Tran family was at its peak, surrounded by the very people whose respect they craved most. She would rip off the mask they forced her to wear and watch it shatter in front of everyone who'd ever believed their lies. The day before the party, Sophia made one final visit to her lawyer friend. They sat in a quiet cafe while the city buzzed outside. He slid a sealed envelope across the table, the last piece of insurance she needed. Once you open this at the party, they can't deny it. The tax fraud, the hidden loans, all of it points back to them. Not you, he said, voice low. Are you ready for this, Sophia? Sophia didn't hesitate. I've been ready my whole life. Back at the Tran house, her mother fussed over a diamond necklace she insisted Sophia wear, a sparkling chain meant to remind everyone that Sophia was their shining jewel. Her father kept barking at the party planners, his smile tight and eyes darting every time his phone buzzed with new threats from creditors. To anyone watching, they still looked like the perfect family. To Sophia, they were rotting from the inside out. The night before the big event, Sophia stood alone in the ballroom, surrounded by white roses, silk tablecloths, and rows of crystal glasses waiting to be filled. She pictured the shocked faces, the gasps when she'd show them exactly who her toxic parents really were. She could almost hear the silence that would follow, the kind that destroys reputations in seconds. Sophia touched the diamond necklace at her throat and whispered to herself, "This ends tomorrow. No more cages. No more lies." And as the lights flickered above her, she knew. Her toxic parents were about to see what happens when the perfect daughter they created decides to burn it all down. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers, laughter, and the soft clink of expensive glasses. Guests in designer suits and glittering gowns filled every corner, whispering about the Tran family's dazzling rise and the perfect daughter who would merge two powerful bloodlines. Sophia stood at the center of it all, a vision in silk and diamonds, her toxic parents beaming at her side. Her mother's nails dug into her arm, a silent reminder to smile wider, stand straighter, be perfect. Her father floated from group to group, shaking hands, dropping hints about lucrative partnerships that were never real. When the master of ceremonies called for quiet, Sophia's father took the stage first. He raised a glass high, voice slick as oil. Tonight, we celebrate family, legacy, and the bright future our daughter brings us all. The crowd erupted in polite applause. He turned to Sophia with that same rehearsed pride. Sophia, my perfect girl, come, say a few words. Sophia stepped forward, the lights warm on her face. For a heartbeat, she let herself remember every piano lesson she wasn't allowed to skip, every friend she was banned from seeing, every dollar they'd stolen in her name. She felt the envelope in her palm, the truth that would shatter the illusion her toxic parents built brick by brick. She took the mic, her voice sweet as sugar. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. My parents worked so hard for this moment. They always told me perfection is a duty. So tonight, I want to give them exactly that, the truth. Confused laughter rippled through the crowd. Sophia's mother's smile twitched. Her father stepped forward, but Sophia raised her hand, calm, unflinching. She opened the envelope and pulled out copies of the forged loan documents. She turned to the giant projector screen behind her, her lawyer friend's final gift. With one click, the ballroom lights dimmed and the screen flickered to life. One by one, slides appeared. Signatures forged in Sophia's name, accounts drained, hidden debts piled on her back without her consent. Murmurs turned to gasps. The word fraud hung heavy in the air. Sophia didn't blink. For years, my parents controlled every penny I made, every breath I took. They used my name to borrow money from criminals, all while parading me as their perfect daughter. Tonight, I'm done being perfect for them. Her father lunged for the mic, face red, spitting half-formed denials. But Sophia stepped back, holding up the next slide. Proof of tax evasion, the hidden paper trail that would bring the IRS and creditors to their door by morning. Her mother's hissed threats melted into desperate whispers. The guests, the same friends who once praised the Tran family's perfection, now stepped away, eyes wide with disgust and fear of guilt by association. Sophia looked at the room, the glittering elite who once clapped for her toxic parents. They built this empire on control and lies, and tonight, I'm taking it all back. The trust, the properties, the money, it's all legally mine now. And they signed every page themselves. Her father's roar of rage was drowned out by the stunned silence that followed. Sophia didn't flinch as her mother grabbed for her arm. She simply stepped out of reach, calm and free for the first time in her life. Security appeared at the edges of the ballroom, clearing a path for Sophia as she turned her back on her parents' pale, ruined faces. The perfect daughter they'd paraded for years had just dismantled their legacy in front of everyone they'd ever tried to impress. Sophia didn't need to say goodbye. She walked out of the ballroom, head high, mask gone, leaving her toxic parents to drown in the wreckage they created with their own signatures. And the world would never see them as perfect again. In the weeks that followed the ballroom scandal, Sophia's toxic parents learned what it meant to lose everything, publicly, painfully, and with no way to hide. Their once bustling phone never rang again with invitations to lavish galas or charity dinners. The same neighbors who used to nod approvingly at their perfectly pruned hedges and shiny cars now crossed the street to avoid them. Sophia's father found his office stripped bare within days, clients fleeing when news of fraud hidden debts, and forged documents spread like wildfire. Her mother's brunch circle vanished overnight, the same gossip hounds now whispering about tax fraud and bankruptcy instead of wedding cakes and designer dresses. For years, Sophia's toxic parents thought shame was a punishment they could wield against her, but they never imagined it would one day swallow them whole. Meanwhile, Sophia didn't waste a single minute gloating. She let the lawyers handle the final steps, freezing her parents out of every account they once used to drain her dry, locking down the trust she controlled, and redirecting every asset they thought was theirs into her own name, legally ironclad, signed by their own greedy hands. The first thing she did was reclaim the Tran family mansion, the gilded cage where she'd been groomed to smile and obey. But instead of moving back in, Sophia walked through the echoing halls one last time. She touched the door to her old bedroom, remembering all the nights she lay awake, wondering if she'd ever be free. And then she closed it, locked it for good, and handed the keys to a demolition crew. A week later, the marble floors and high walls came down, brick by brick, replaced by new blueprints Sophia had drawn up herself. Where her toxic parents once paraded their fake perfection, she would build something real, a community law center dedicated to children like her, kids trapped by controlling families, forced to be obedient at any cost. Sophia knew her parents would hate that more than anything. Their perfect house turned into a sanctuary for children escaping other toxic parents just like them. When the final papers were signed, Sophia made one last visit. She didn't scream or throw accusations. She didn't need to. She sat across the table from her father and mother in a cold lawyer's office, their eyes sunken, their once slick smiles long gone. "You always told me perfection was my duty," Sophia said, voice calm. "So I perfected your downfall, and you signed every page yourselves." Her father tried to bargain, promising to change, begging for a piece of what was once theirs. Her mother reached for her hand, the same hand that used to pull her hair and force her to stand straight, smile wider, stay silent. Sophia pulled her hand away. "We're done. You can't control me anymore, and you don't own a single part of my life now." Outside, she stepped into the sun, feeling the weight lift off her shoulders for the first time in years. No more scripts, no more fake smiles, no more pretending to be the perfect daughter for anyone. Her toxic parents were left with nothing but each other, the perfect match for their own misery. For the first time in her life, Sophia woke up without a script to follow. No checklists pinned to her bedroom door. No parents watching her every move, pulling her strings to maintain their perfect image. Freedom felt quiet at first, too quiet. Some nights, she caught herself listening for her mother's footsteps in the hallway or her father's voice booming about family duty. But the echoes faded, and when they did, Sophia learned that silence can be a gift. She poured that silence into building her new life, one that wasn't polished for show, but built to protect others from what she'd survived. The old Tran mansion came down faster than she expected. In its place rose bright new walls filled with classrooms, offices, and warm open spaces. No marble floors, no golden chandeliers, just clean tables, sturdy bookshelves, and doors that never locked behind frightened kids. Sophia named it the Phoenix House, a place where children from controlling, manipulative homes could get the legal help, therapy, and community they needed to break free. A place for kids who didn't even know they had rights because their toxic parents taught them obedience was the only option. She didn't do it alone. She hired young lawyers who understood why fighting family abuse is harder than any other case. She brought in counselors who sat with trembling teenagers at 3 a.m, telling them, "You're not alone." And at night, when the building emptied out, Sophia sat at her desk, sorting through new cases, each one a reminder that she'd turned her cage into a key. When old neighbors drove past and gawked at the new sign on the front gate, Sophia didn't flinch. Let them gossip. Let them whisper about the perfect daughter who tore her toxic parents' empire down to its rotten bones and built something better on the ashes. Sometimes, people asked if she regretted it, if she'd ever forgive them. Sophia always gave the same answer. Forgiveness is a choice. Safety is a right. Sometimes you can't have both. She didn't pretend to be healed overnight. Healing, Sophia learned, wasn't about pretending the scars weren't there. It was about looking at them and saying, "You don't control me anymore." The trust fund her parents signed over funded the Phoenix House for years to come. Every brick, every scholarship, every court fee for a child brave enough to fight back, all paid for by the same lies her toxic parents once used to trap her. It was poetic, Sophia thought. The perfect daughter had become the perfect reckoning. One evening, long after the last child had gone home, Sophia stood outside the building under the soft glow of the new sign. She thought about the little girl she used to be, the girl who bowed her head, smiled for the neighbors, did everything right so her parents would love her more than they feared losing her. She whispered to that girl inside her, "You're safe now. We did it." And maybe that was enough. Maybe not every story ends with a perfect family reunion or an apology that fixes years of pain. Sometimes, the real happy ending is the one you build for yourself, brick by brick, truth by truth. Sophia turned off the lights, locked the front door of the Phoenix House behind her, and stepped into the night. No mask, no leash, no fear, just free.